And when I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
And if we're talking tight ends and we're going into round 2, maybe round 3, give me Ian Thomas, please. Let's just do the damn thing.
Just based on giving his overall ability. Again, I like his arm. I think he can make every throw.
The pick at number 12 is in.
Welcome to Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast. I am Russell Brown. Joining me today, as always, my colleague and co-host, Christian Page. CP, how we doing, brother?
Doing well. Just getting closer and closer to some playoff football. I was just looking over the standings today, and this may be an overreaction, so bear with me, but I think this could really be one of the more competitive playoff situations that at least I've been heavily a part in, because I think there's a handful of teams that could really make a case to be Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, no doubt. It's interesting. We've got 3 weeks left, and it's really like, man, I don't know who is going to win what or who's going where. Like Kansas City, they've locked up a playoff berth, but they're technically, they don't have the division locked up. They don't have, the conference locked up. New England's still very much in it at 9-4. Houston's in it at 9-4. The LA Chargers are in it at 10-3. A big game on Thursday between the Chargers and the Chiefs. And that's just in the AFC. You move over to the NFC, you've got the Saints and the Rams at 11-2 fighting for home field advantage throughout the NFC. The Bears, their dominant defense, took apart the Rams on Sunday night, and it looked like Jared Goff wanted nothing to do with playing in a Soldier Field and being a part of Chicago. The Dallas Cowboys have emerged with the Seattle Seahawks at 8-5, two solid defenses as of right now. And surprisingly enough, the Cowboys have allowed only 246 points this year, which is a pretty big turnaround from where they have normally been. They're not scoring as many points, but they're winning games. Granted, some of these games are close because of odd penalties that shouldn't be penalties. And trust me, I know as a Lions fan from previous experience. But yes, it's heating up. It's getting neck and neck. And normally I think at this point in the season, we have kind of an outright number one team in each conference. And we don't have that right now.
No, yeah, we definitely don't. And I just think, of course, the last few weeks of every NFL season are very crucial, of course, for the wild card positions like that. But I think it's crucial. And, it depends, how you look at situations like, has New Orleans been as crisp as they were, 5-6 weeks ago? No, they're not. And if you want to say that's fatigue for Drew Brees and over quarterback or fatigue across the whole board, you can make that argument. So you kind of have to say, well, do you kind of rest up and kind of get through some games like like New Orleans did Tampa Bay just this past week? Or do you want to sit there and be on the upswing and, gaining that momentum going in the playoffs? I'm sure it's probably the latter, but still you have to evaluate each situation. But, if you look at a team like Dallas, obviously started off very slow, and now they're one of the hottest teams in football right now. But they're not even playing all that great, which is kind of concerning, but kind of scary at the same time as well. Their defense has been fantastic, like you touched on, but still, when you're getting a few turnovers from Dak, but you're finding ways to win football games, you have to think that's good going forward. But when does Dak Prescott take that next big step to not getting to the playoffs, but winning a playoff football game, which of course is always key for Dallas, Jason Garrett, Jerry Jones, and whoever. But you take like a Chicago team, for example. Mitchell Trubisky did not play well whatsoever the other night, but the Bears defense is playing like Dallas, playing some of the best defense in the NFL this year. And, they're showing ability to run the football as well. So there's some little intricacies for each team. They just got to put it all together. But I think it's going to make for a very fun playoff race in these next few weeks. And then when we ultimately get to the playoffs.
Yeah, I selfishly want the Dallas Cowboys to finish 8-8, just like they always do. But, they've got an 8-5 record. They've got games against Tampa, the Giants, and the Colts who they play this week. So, it seems unlikely that they finish 8-8, but the Colts will be a good matchup. And, just the NFC, the AFC is just wide open, especially in the wild card race, because the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't know what's going on there. Obviously, they don't know how to draft defensive backs, but they're 7-5-1. They have one of the wild card spots locked up right now with the Baltimore Ravens at 7-6, but you have the Colts there at 7-6, the Miami Dolphins and Tennessee Titans. Your Tennessee Titans are 7-6, and then you've got the Denver Broncos at 6-7. And don't look now, but the Cleveland Browns are 5-7-1. And if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, we have a strong Buffalo Bill following, as we know. They're sitting there at 4-9, and they lost to the Jets this past week. They lost the week before that. If they, were able to put together 2 more wins there, they'd be sitting right there at 6-7 on the outside looking in, but having a chance. And at 4-9, you're pretty much, you're done. So that's unfortunate for Bills Mafia. But yes, very exciting. Can't wait for the next couple of weeks. I mean, I don't want them to go by, but that puts us more into draft season, as we know. But if you are like me and you've been knocked out of the fantasy football playoffs, well, then you're probably pretty bored. And you're probably like, man, I have no waivers to look at. I have nothing to do. Well, you can change that with Thrive Fantasy. It's a lot different than DraftKings. It's a lot different for FanDuel. And I'm not saying you can't play those, but you should definitely check out Thrive Fantasy. It's a brand new way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is go to bit.ly/Russ NFL Draft. That's bit.ly/Russ NFL Draft. And you have to just sign up with a $10 deposit. They will credit you $10, and you have basically a free $10 to play around with, and you can cash out and not even spend your $10. So think about it that way, but it's a new way, and it's rather than just doing a 50,000 fake team salary, you would essentially be doing a sports prop betting type of formula that they have set up for you to select your lineups and do it that way. So it's a lot of fun. You need to check it out. So check it out at bit.ly/Russ NFL Draft. That's with Thrive Fantasy. Start Thrive today with daily fantasy sports. So we're moving forward. We want to move to the more of the Senior Bowl discussion. We've got some stuff where we're going to look at some team needs for the top 3 teams in the NFL draft. As of right now, obviously, like we said, a lot of stuff is wide open to end the year, but more so towards the playoffs. But the top 3 seems to be setting in with San Francisco, Arizona, and Oakland. And Oakland's very interesting because they've got 3 first-round selections. But we will jump into that momentarily. I want to jump more into the Senior Bowl stuff because you had a very good piece come out over the weekend on cover1.net, which you guys can all check out. It's titled 2019 NFL Draft Senior Bowl Roster Reveal and Reaction. And it's not every single player, obviously, because there's about 90 to 100 prospects in the Senior Bowl. But there's some very good detail here by CP. And you've talked about some guys that you thought, just missed the cut. And, you seemed a little upset about it. You can definitely read that. I sensed it for sure. Obviously, maybe I know you. But then you go into detail about guys that, are the top prospects on the roster. Just very good. You guys got to check it out. But there have been some players that have been invited and they were yet to accept on Saturday. But we've, potentially got a few more here. Isaiah Buggs from Alabama, and the guys that you have listed, Isaiah Buggs from Alabama, Paris Campbell from Ohio State, Farrell from Clemson, Damian Harris from Alabama, Jalen Hurd from Baylor, Bryce Love from Stanford, Christian Miller, linebacker out of Bama, Montez Sweat, who I hope goes from Mississippi State, Jerry Tillery, who I also hope is there, Notre Dame defensive tackle, and Christian Wilkins, Clemson defensive tackle. So has anything changed on our front as far as some of these players that have accepted between now and Saturday?
Of the ones you just read off, I believe Isaiah Buggs is the only one. I know Jalen Jelks, the pass rusher / defensive end out of Oregon, did get an invite and did accept. I know LJ Scott, the running back out of Michigan State, also accepted. I feel like there's a couple more and they're slipping my mind. But, yeah, as the week progresses and how his bowl season progresses, you'll start to see maybe one a day, maybe one every 2 or 3 days. But more and more, I mean, that Senior Bowl roster is, about 85% full right now, but still there's 15% of invitations left out there that are of the names you just read, top level caliber prospects there. So definitely looking forward to, getting some of those, hearing some of those names of acceptance here soon. And so definitely Jim Nagy on Twitter and the Reese's Senior Bowl Twitter, they're very good at social media. They keep everybody updated on accepted invites. I've noticed the website's a little far behind on the roster. So if you're looking for people to accept or looking for some news, definitely go on Twitter first, because on some of the accepted invites, like Drew Lock's not even on the roster yet on the website. So he's definitely accepted and has got some recognition on Twitter. So definitely check out them on Twitter and just follow everybody at Cover One, and we'll hopefully get you updated with some of the prospect previews heading into Senior Bowl.
Yeah, and you talked about some guys that got snubbed, and one that I was very intrigued with was Dakota Allen, Texas Tech linebacker. What's your thoughts on him? I mean, obviously, if you guys want to check it out, if you're more of a reader rather than a listener and you need it in front of you, check it out over at Cover One. But I mean, what's your thoughts on him? I mean, you talked about his burst acceleration. He definitely seems like one of those guys that has, good lateral ability, good change of direction, a guy that can get sideline to sideline. I mean, what's really the story behind him missing the cut?
Yeah, and that's what I want to know. And for selfish reasons, I want him there just to talk with him one-on-one about his story and his upbringing in college football, because if you're familiar with his story, he started out at Texas Tech, got in some trouble, dismissed from the university, not only the football team, but pretty much had a restraining order from Lubbock and the university there. If you're familiar with Last Chance U, he was one of the more popular guys on there, and you were instantly a fan because he had a very humble approach, knew he messed up, and really wanted to get back out there, and he received some offers from decent schools out there. Of course, them knowing his background, that kind of, cut ties with some of the bigger schools out there, but he wanted that Texas Tech offer, and he was not going to quit until he got there. Didn't really want to go anywhere else but Texas Tech because he wanted to redeem himself, and ultimately he did, and he's put together an all Big 12 year. But like you said, on the field, he has that burst and acceleration. I compared his ability similar to a safety, though he's playing outside linebacker, but kind of has a nose for the football. There might be some physical limitations there based on block shedding and overall just dealing with some inline blocking with like tight ends and fullbacks and stuff. But I think the Senior Bowl, of course, it is focused very closely with the player's ability on the field. But that interview process is very important, and I would be definitely interested to know his background and his path to get where he is now. And I think this would be a very cool way to end his college football career, is to, start off being kicked off the team at a university and then going back to that university and then coming to the Senior Bowl, being recognized as one of the top players in all of college football. That's why I wanted to see him on there. But on the field, he's also deserved that praise and that recognition to be a member of the Senior Bowl roster. So still, we do have some time, but he's definitely one of the bigger guys that I think should have at least been talked about on the roster. Maybe those conversations were had, but I definitely think Dakota Allen should be in Mobile in January. Could still happen, but right now he's not on the Senior Bowl roster.
Yeah, the story is just interesting in general. And, just that whole thing, missing a whole season, not being allowed on campus and just working your way back. And it's nice that he redeemed himself totally. And I totally think I like that Dumb and Dumber scene. If you've never seen the movie, then I don't think we can be podcast partners anymore or friends in general. So you've seen Dumb and Dumber, right?
I have, yeah.
Okay. So it's like, traveling across the country and you totally redeem yourself. Just, I don't know. When you said redeem yourself, it made me think.
Yeah.
But his story is very intriguing. And I always wonder like the process of the invites. And like, I know they only have so many invites that they can hand out, it's almost like scholarships for collegiate teams. And, they only have so many scholarships that they can hand out. But with so many, invites that you can do, it is intriguing to see why this guy and not that guy. And this is a guy that definitely seems like, he's talented enough on the field. The stats back it up as well. I mean, he had 61 tackles this past year, 5.5 for loss. In 2017, he had over 100 tackles. He had 2 sacks, 2 picks, 4 pass deflections. So, he is very talented all the way across the board. He's one of those, probably not so much a Mike linebacker or a Sam or anything, but, he's more of a guy that I think would play as a weak side backer for a team, probably do some blitzing and causing havoc in the backfield that way. But again, it's just intriguing to me on how those invites even start. And another a prime example of that is like LJ Scott. You had all these invites and then he declared for the draft and all of a sudden now he's in the Senior Bowl. So it's just interesting. And LJ Scott's one of those guys that when I saw it, I was like, wow, Like, that's a little shocking because, a few weeks ago we were talking about him coming back to the university and playing again at Michigan State and how they were going to have Lewerke back, and which I think Lewerke is going to come back. But then, LJ Scott, some of the receivers that they have, all this stuff was going to play into their favor. And obviously LJ Scott's been down since his freshman year, but his story is just, what's off the field? Is that off the field stuff checking off for him as well? So if Dakota Allen can get that invite, I hope he accepts it. I hope he does get an invite. And you would have to think that Jim Nagy and Mobile and the crew down there would have to be thinking about a guy like that, especially if they're considering a guy like LJ Scott. Obviously, Allen's case is more severe, but Scott is just one of those similar guys with off the field stuff. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But you did talk about the top guys down there. I can't disagree with any of the names you had. You had Josh Allen, outside backer for Kentucky, Deebo Samuel, receiver for South Carolina as number 2, Zach Allen, defensive end for Boston College, Jalen Ferguson, your boy, D-end out of Louisiana Tech, and Juan Thornhill, Virginia safety. I think one guy that just does not get enough hype is Zach Allen. I know he's on your list here. I just don't think he gets enough discussion. He's a polished player. He's got good technique, plays below pad level. He is thick. He's stout. Lot to love with him. I'm just a little shocked that he just does not get the proper buzz.
Yeah, like, he's not somebody that, like, jumps off the page with, like, these big-time, like, highlight reels of, overwhelming, like, quickness or, like, this brute strength or anything like that. But that doesn't mean he's not a good football player. And I feel like a lot of times, like, people get this, acclaimed attention because, Josh Allen did this swim move and beat the tackle and, crushed the quarterback. Well, Zach Allen, on the other hand, he's going to sit there and he's going to be a technically sound guy. He's not going to wow with overwhelming athleticism, but he's going to get the job done. And I know that's not like a sexy thing that you want from, like, a first-round defensive end guy, but he's fine in the run game. He's fine in the pass game. Sure, he's not the most, like, flexible or loose guy in his lower body, but I think he finds ways to kind of use a trump card around that. Just based on his motor and just aggressive attitude. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%. When you're talking about, the top defensive lineman in the first round, Zach Allen's name is never mentioned. And I don't know if he fits the billing of a top 15, top 20 guy, but he definitely has some of those abilities can be very comparable to the guys at the top end of this draft class. And somebody's going to be very pleased with maybe a late first round guy, early second round guy, and Zach Allen, because I think he can bring, like, he's a guy that's ready to play in the NFL right now because his inconsistencies or his weaknesses are not glaring enough for me to be like, I don't want to touch him. I think Zach Allen's going to be we were talking about safest players a few weeks ago. I don't think Zach Allen would be like the safest, but if I were to make a list, maybe a top 5, top 10, I think you put Zach Allen definitely on that list.
I can't disagree. He would be on my list for sure. I'm a big fan. And just Boston College, they got ballers, man, over there. They got Chris Lindstrom. They got, him. They got Tommy Sweeney. They've got their the safety. There's a safety from Boston College going there. But there's another one. What's his name? Lucas Dennis, I think his name is.
Yeah. Yep.
He's vicious, man. I mean, they've got some talent there, and I think they've got some nice things. They also re-signed their coach to a 2-year extension as well. So today, so that'll be interesting. But
yeah, put it this way: Harold Landry drops way low in the second, or not way low in the second round, but he did drop to the second round last year. I know he only has like 2.5, 3 sacks for the Titans right now. Don't make the same mistake, NFL. Zach Allen's a really good football player. Harold Landry's had a solid rookie season. Don't let the Boston College name tag confuse you or put you like, we don't want the guy. Zach Allen is definitely worth the draft pick. Just like Harold Landry was worth a top 20 pick a year ago, Zach Allen's definitely worth at least a back end or early second round pick.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we were talking about this in last week's show, just the one-on-one matchups. We talked Ronell Wren against Bradbury. You add this, Zach Allen against, Yadni Kajust, Chuma Udoga.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah, Dalton Reisner, Max Sharping, Caleb McGarry from Washington, the 6'8", 324. The guy's a monster. So, I mean, you've got some names there that I think Dennis Daly, 6'6", 324. I mean, we're talking beef on beef here. And this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for it. Zach Allen, I think, is going to probably be one of the bigger risers out of the group completely. And that's, I mean, not saying that he's bad, but that's just saying because he's not getting enough attention. So we'll see how it goes. We've got more as we move along and across the board of the Senior Bowl as more accepted invites go. But I will say the Senior Bowl is a great place for obviously networking. It's a great place for, just getting back and chilling out, drinking some beers, having some fun, watching some football, no doubt. But it is a great place just to get an up close and personal look of a player. And that was my take with Ian Thomas. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say the brand is strong today because Ian Thomas had a career day on Sunday against Cleveland. Yeah, the Panthers lost 26-20 in Cleveland. They're falling apart right now. I think they've lost 3 in a row, and things aren't.
I think it's more than that. It might be 5 in a row.
Oh, well, even worse.
I think they started 6-2, and they're now 6-7.
Yeah. I think
it's not good. The Panthers are done for sure.
Yeah, no, they're definitely done in that conference. I mean, they're still in it, but they would need a collapse from. Well, no, they're still in it. Actually, they've lost 5 in a row, and they are still in it. They can't win on the road. That's the problem. They're 1-6 on the road, but Minnesota's 6-1, which they just fired John DeFilippo. Seattle's in it. Dallas, Chicago, the Rams, and the Saints. There's your division winners. So, yeah, they're still in it. The Vikings, the Panthers, the Eagles, and the Redskins, surprisingly, are all in this thing. And I guess my team, the Detroit Lions, are still in this, but they would need every team in front of them to lose, and that's just not going to happen. But no, so Ian Thomas had his coming out party on Sunday. He went 9 for 77. I wrote a piece last night. It dropped today. You guys can check that out about his emergence in the Panthers offense and how he's basically filling in the shoes for Greg Olsen. And it was weird. I was thinking about it, and I was looking into it. Greg Olsen was the only starting tight end, well, other than when he was hurt, obviously, but he was the only tight end for Cam Newton in his career. And that's saying something because that team ran and still does. They run so much play action. And play action isn't just necessarily, to open up the passing game for the tight end, but a lot of the time those targets get sent towards the tight end. And Greg Olsen was very productive, had over 5,500 receiving yards, I believe had 37 touchdowns. I'm just going off of memory, but I mean, he was very productive for them. Ian Thomas can be in the same boat. And it's for me, it's a good feeling because it's that's when I really saw Ian Thomas up close and personal. I saw the 6'4", 260-pound frame, this guy that just had mass bulk frame that was going to bully you. And it's this is a great opportunity for people to see what they're seeing on tape and see how it translates. And if a guy's not doing it right in Mobile, in practice, and in that game, there's a chance that maybe there's some what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe there's some flaws in the actual tape. So it's just so interesting to me. And is there a guy that stood out to you last year in Mobile that was wow, I need to watch more of this guy, or they just were big climbers up the board? Because Ian Thomas was the biggest riser for me.
Oh man, you've got to go back. Yeah, some guys come to mind. I guess, and I was never down on Isaiah Wynn, but I wasn't necessarily
That's a good
on board with him being one of the top guys in the class. And I went and he dominated Mobile. And unfortunately, he tore his knee up. He hasn't played for the Patriots this year, but that was a guy that I really stood out. I think he won Practice Player of the Week. One of the guys that definitely stood out. And Rashad Penny kind of caught my eye, not so much based on what he did, but just looking at his body type and just ability to kind of be possibly a 3-down back. And I did not expect him to be a first-round pick. I'm not agreeing with that selection whatsoever, but those were a couple guys that kind of got me back to watch some film. Deshaun Hamilton out of Penn State, I thought he was a really good route runner, one of the better ones in last year's class, and, of course, at the Senior Bowl. And then DJ Chark was also another guy out of LSU, because LSU guys, they get lost because, I mean, it's a cliche now that who's the next LSU receiver to come out of that offense that didn't do anything in college and now become, these great NFL receivers. Chark had that intrigue last year, showed that he was more of a complete receiver than just a deep threat. But those are some few guys, and it's good. Like your opinion for the Senior Bowl when you go in, it does not need to be concrete. And I'm not saying you, I'm just talking you generally, because you need to get your mind opened up. And I'm not saying come in there and say, the Senior Bowl is end all be all, because if that's the case, there's going to be a lot of failed analysis there. But I still think, watch a couple games, get, understand the ability, what you liked out of this guy, what you didn't like out of this guy. Sit there and have those traits listed, and then have a little, have some notes right beside it and be like, well, he looks better in this regard or looks worse in this regard. Go back and watch this game where you saw this and see if you still agree or disagree. So I don't know. That was just kind of a tangent on the Senior Bowl, but it's definitely some players that, some guys that I don't even know, and it's hard to get some tape on some of these FCS guys. And they definitely, like a Darius Leonard, didn't see much of him all leading up to the Senior Bowl. Comes out, he's a candidate to be Defensive Rookie of the Year right now. So definitely a lot of players out there that not everybody has a full opinion on, but will after the Senior Bowl. And that's the best place to get a full opinion on them, and then get you to inspire you to go back and watch film and check some boxes on the player.
Yeah, it's just a good spot to find technique and really see what a player does, because, if a guy just doesn't have the right technique, odds are it's not going to translate in a game. You have to have that good technique. You have to have good habits. If you don't have good habits, it's not going to translate to anything on the field. And I think that's proof. And the Senior Bowl just gives you an opportunity to see that up close and personal. So it's interesting. And I'm excited for it. And we've got more accepted invites probably throughout the week that we'll get to probably in article form or next week on the podcast. But let's get into team needs, something we haven't done yet on the show. We've done a lot of attention towards the Senior Bowl. We've done a lot of attention towards specific prospects. We can certainly talk prospects right now, but I really want to put a focus on, in general, the top three teams in the NFL draft order right now, the three worst teams. We could talk about, Atlanta and the New York Jets at 4 and 5, but really right now, the three worst teams in the league at 3 and 10 are the San Francisco 49ers, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Oakland Raiders. And the Raiders, like I was mentioning earlier, they're interesting because they've got 3 first-round picks with their trade with Dallas, their trade with Chicago, potential playoff teams. So these picks will be in the 20s somewhere, but it's something that they need because their defense is just really bad. And they've only recorded 11 sacks this year. It certainly seems like edge rusher is a big need. Their offense is starting to turn it around a little bit. They've, I think, averaged just over 24 points in the last 3 or 4 games. And there was a conversation of, is John Gruden going to get rid of Derek Carr? Maybe that goes to the side, or maybe that is a conversation that will be had. But for me personally, I feel like it's going to happen. I feel like Derek Carr is going to be dealt. And maybe I'm crazy for thinking that. Right now they're projected to pick 3rd. So I know I'm going out of order a little bit, but they're just interesting to me because Oakland, they've got the 3 picks. They've got some of this dilemma, this drama around Derek Carr. It's built around him. Is he their franchise guy? They just fired the general manager. So they've got some drama built around him. And, of course, John Gruden is there. But they have some obvious needs. Getting a defensive end and edge rusher is probably the biggest need. But if they move Derek Carr, they're sitting there at 3. Dwayne Haskins could potentially be there if he declares, which it sounds like he's going to. Justin Herbert, if he declares, would probably be there. What do they do? I mean, what do they take?
Yeah, that's the big question. And now, throw a new wrench in the conversation with Reggie McKenzie being relieved of his duties or parting ways, however you want to phrase it. He's not going to be there for the draft. And now it's John Gruden's team officially. And it's always going to be interesting from when he's at the helm. Each offseason is going to be even more interesting, or each season to begin with, because Khalil Mack was dealt right at the beginning of the year. But, I definitely think you look at pass rusher here because I think there are some can't-miss guys, whether they are in the interior or if they're on the outside, like a Nick Bosa out of Ohio State. One of your favorite guys, Ed Oliver, who could be a versatile candidate, playing inside and then move him out maybe on 3rd downs or move him inside on 3rd downs and play him outside on 1st and 2nd down. So I think there's some very versatile defensive linemen here that they should definitely jump on. Yes, I know we keep talking about how deep of a class the defensive line group is, but still that's not to say – I mean, a lot of them are going to be picked in the 1st round. And so I don't think one's really going to fall in your lap. Now, you'll have potentially a handful of guys like a Zach Allen we were talking about that could ultimately make it to the second round, or maybe the other picks that you mentioned. But if you want the premier pass rusher, I think Oakland has to act at pick 3 with their first pick. But I think the question is, and you talked about it, are they 100% sold on Derek Carr being the franchise quarterback? They sure paid him like they are, but now they're looking possible, candidates to trade. Is Jacksonville in the quarterback market, or some other teams out there in the quarterback market that could give up some other pieces for Oakland to sit there and look to the future? Because Oakland's definitely not in a win now mode. They've made that evident dealing Khalil Mack, dealing Amari Cooper, and of course, if they deal Derek Carr, they're definitely in a rebuilding type mode, no matter what the front office or John Gruden says. But I think you look at pass rusher here, you look at, depending on the quarterback situation, you look at wide receiver and linebackers later on.
Yeah, pass rusher's probably on top of the list, but call me crazy, CP, but dude, I'm going to go – they go quarterback somewhere in this draft. And I think dealing Derek Carr is a strong possibility. I think the New York Giants are a team that make a lot of sense. I think he's a fit for that offense. You put him around playmakers. You've got a guy like Saquon Barkley, one of the best young backs in the league, potential rookie of the year. And you have a guy like OBJ. We all know how talented he is. Evan Ingram, he's been dinged up, but a very solid tight end, a guy that is a mismatch out of the slot, can do a lot of different things. You've got Sterling Shepard. There's a lot of things that they can do in New York. And I think the thought process for them going into the offseason isn't so much, hey, let's build this defense up, let's build this offense up as far as offensive line, because you're not going to do that in one draft, and you're not going to do it in free agency all at one time. Because I'm not a firm believer in the fact of spending, and this is probably one of the reasons to why I just don't write for a specific team anymore, because I have a hard time talking with the fans because they're so incompetent. And maybe it's because of the team that I used to write for, the Detroit Lions, but it's just there's so much incompetence. They're like, well, we've got this money. We can spend it on this guy. We can do that. Yeah, we could. But there's a reason why these players hit the free agent market, not because they, are just wanting more money. Yeah, that's a part. But part of it's because they just don't have it anymore. Like Ziggy Ansah is going to end the season on IR again. He's going to come off the franchise tag this season. He's going to hit the market. Somebody's going to pay top dollar for a premier edge rusher, and he's not even going to be premier. He's not a premier talent anymore. He shouldn't get premier money, but he's going to because of his name and his track record in the early stages of his career, and people are going to believe that there's untapped potential. And that's the problem with free agency. So many people believe that with these names. There's a reason why they hit the market, and there's a reason why they flaked out with one team. It's going to happen again with many teams, and you're seeing the backlash with heavy spending in free agency. The Giants are doing it already. Janoris Jenkins is a shell of what he used to be. Their linebacker group has never been existent. And Damon Harrison, he's gone. Olivier Vernon, he's been, inactive for weeks and weeks and weeks. And he's been active. When he's been active, he's been okay, but there's been a lot of inconsistencies there. So again, there's a chance, I think, where they say, hey, you know what? There's a lot of uncertainty in this quarterback class. We don't really know much about Dwayne Haskins, or we like Dwayne Haskins, but there's a chance that he's not there because the Jacksonville Jaguars are picking in front of him. And then you've got, uncertainty with Justin Herbert and just the other quarterbacks, where I think the Giants might say, hey, you know what, screw it. We're going to go get our offense together. We're going to get our quarterback, and our job is going to be the same as what the Rams are doing, the same as what the Chiefs are doing. We're going to just outscore everybody. Screw the defensive part of the game. We're just going to try to outscore everybody. We're going to compete offensively, and, we'll hope for a couple of defensive stops and get lucky that way. So, again, it just wouldn't surprise me if Derek Carr was an Oakland Raider next year, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was like a New York Giant or just with a team like Jacksonville or whatever. But edge rusher for sure if the roster stays the same right now. But if it doesn't, I think quarterback obviously becomes that spot. So Arizona, number 2, what do they do with what they – their team is just all over the place. They can't score offensively. They've got a young quarterback in Josh Rosen who – I think has it to be a good quarterback, but Christian Kirk is now inactive. He's on IR. Larry Fitzgerald just has been dinged up all year. David Johnson, first season back after being on IR all of last season. Their offensive line is a mess, a ton of injuries. There's a clear need, I think, at offensive tackle. I think Jonah Williams is a home run for them, regardless at 2 or not. But what do they do? How do they attack the draft with the second pick right now?
Yeah, I think if you want to make the case that Jonah Williams is one of the safest players in this whole class, then I can jump on board with that. And if that's what you need in Arizona, and I've always been a proponent in saying if you're going to have an early investment in a quarterback, as they did last year with Josh Rosen, you immediately start looking and surrounding that player, that quarterback, with talented guys and guys that will protect him, that will get him in the best, comfort zone to go forward and with his career, and get guys that are the same age as him that you can sit there and keep building and going forward with, kind of what Dallas is doing right now. I know the offensive line came in before Dak Prescott, but Prescott, Cooper, and Ezekiel Elliott are all about the same age. So I think you kind of take that similar approach with Arizona. You got your franchise running back, assuming he stays healthy. I know he's been banged up throughout his career. You think you did well with Christian Kirk. Obviously, I think wide receiver, a couple picks of wide receiver would not be a bad idea late in the draft. But you're looking at offensive line. You got 3 out of your 5 main starters on IR. Mason Cole, the rookie out of Michigan, is your starting center. But I still think you're looking at Jonah Williams, an offensive tackle. If you want to try him at guard, then so be it. I think he could probably give you something there. But I think he's one of the safest players here. And, of course, if you're going to go forward with a franchise quarterback that you believe in, you definitely have to shore up the bookends. I think Jonah Williams definitely answers that. And who knows? I know the offensive tackle class isn't as strong as a lot of people want to make it out to be. But still, if you look in the second or third round, I think there's some players that, could be worth evolving and coaching up a little bit. We talked about Max Sharping, maybe not a polished player, but I think there's some potential there. Maybe third or fourth round if they want to invest in that, get them in something. Then you got maybe 2 bookend rookie tackles in the future there for Josh Rosen. But I think it definitely starts on the offensive line here. You can look at receiver, but I don't think there's a receiver worth this high of a pick right now. I definitely think you look to the offensive line, and that would by far be Jonah Williams, because I don't think there's another offensive lineman in this class worthy of a top 10 pick.
Well, according to the quote-unquote experts, Greg Little is the guy. But we've had that discussion about Greg Little out of Ole Miss, and he has officially declared for the draft, which he has first-round potential. I'm not saying that's not the case. He's relatively athletic. He moves well for a player his size. But, again, we've always talked about hand placement with him, very inconsistent. And if he was the second pick of the draft, man, is that Greg Robinson all over again or what? I mean,
it could be.
I mean, oh, my gosh. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But moving forward, and we'll get out of here, the potential first pick of the draft right now, as we look at it, a team with a 3-10 record is San Francisco. And it's really hard to say what this team's biggest need is, because they're playing without their quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. They're playing without their big free agent acquisition, and this is another reason why you just don't do it. You spend all this money. Jerick McKinnon hasn't played for them yet, but they spent top dollar for him to be.
Yeah, that was not ideal. That was one of the ones that definitely caught me off guard, because you're not even getting a starter. Like, you're putting a guy that it's kind of typecasted in a sense, and you're putting him in a starting role. Of course, the first year he gets hurt. So yeah, that definitely. Going to your point, yeah, I was not a fan when that happened, especially for a running back.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on the money aspect of it. I think he's a hell of a player. I thought he was a good fit.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, but it didn't make a lot of sense. I'm in agreement with you, but maybe he turns into something. Matt Breida seems like he's got potential all over the place. Shout out to his marketing agent, Matt Ullman, who I've worked with in the past. Just throwing that out there. Great guy. Marketing agent for Juju Smith-Schuster as well, who was wide receiver 3, by the way, in 2017. Just saying. We took Tez Tabor instead, so it is what it is. Yeah, I'm a disgruntled Lions fan. I'm just preparing for tomorrow. I'm doing a bunch of Lions-Bills podcasts over the next 24 hours, so I'm just preparing myself. But for San Francisco, they've got edge rusher as the biggest need, because they don't really have that true edge rusher. DeForest Buckner is probably that guy with 9 sacks right now. Eric Armstead with 3 sacks. Where is Solomon Thomas? He's got 1 sack on the season. Just dreadful. That looks like a terrible pick right now. But I think the biggest need, and we were talking about this before the show, is probably their pass defense. I mean, they've got 2 interceptions on the year. That is terrible. Absolutely terrible. My team, the Detroit Lions, which is second worst, tied for second worst with Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Arizona, a team that has not drafted a cornerback in the first round since 1998 in Terry Fair, which was the pick before Randy Moss. The Detroit Lions do have 6 interceptions on the season. San Francisco has 2. 2. That is dreadful for a defense that is playing against Josh Rosen. Terrible for a defense that, is playing against Jared Goff and Russell Wilson. But for 2 teams that have good quarterbacks but have a tendency to throw the football, you only have 2 interceptions. I mean, and I'm saying that because you're playing those teams 6 times out of the season. It's terrible. 2 interceptions. There's got to be a defensive back that they're thinking about, whether it's Byron Murphy, your potential CB1, my potential CB1 and DeAndre Baker, or the consensus is Greedy Williams. I don't know if they take him at number 1, any of those guys. Edge rush would probably make the most sense. Nick Bosa, Quinnen Williams, probably not, but I mean, he might be the safer pick. Nick Bosa with the injury, I don't know how I feel about that, but the guy makes sense, but does he make sense schematically? There's a lot to dive into here. So what direction do they go?
Yeah, I think it's a tough call, but I think if Nick Bosa is healthy, I think he's the best player in this draft.
Yes.
You would have to think that he is going to be healthy, of course, leaving Ohio State's football team to prepare his body and himself for the draft process. So I would think come combine time, he should be A-okay. And I think at that point, San Francisco or whoever's picking first, because I feel like the teams in the top 5 right now all could use a Nick Bosa on their team right now. So I don't think he's definitely penciled into just San Francisco. I think every team with poor records right now could use a guy like Nick Bosa. But yeah, I think if you look at him, I guess you could fit him into their scheme. I know they like the more longer, beefier guys, and Bosa's not really that, but he's going to give you a lot more than just that. He has the quicker elements, the flexibility, the awareness. But like you said, Solomon Thomas, their second overall pick a couple years ago, not looking good, looked great at the time. Reuben Foster was the back-end pick too. He's no longer on the team. So we thought John Lynch hit a home run in his first draft, which he did. I'm not going to be that guy that says, oh, he screwed up, because I think at that present day, like Reuben Foster is by far one of the best linebacker prospects in probably 5 years. Just mentally and the character background, it was not there. But Solomon Thomas, you turn on his Stanford tape and you're pretty impressed, but still he's not panning out in the NFL. So I think you look at the defensive line again. We talk about this defensive line class is very strong, so I think you have to get the guy while you can, and why not get the best one? And Nick Bosa, or whoever the San Francisco 49ers value, but I wouldn't shy away from them maybe slipping a few picks back, and especially if Byron Murphy or DeAndre Baker is their CB1, I think you could probably get those guys probably around pick 10. So if the price is right and they want to trade out of that number 1 spot or wherever they're picking, if they're not sold on Greedy Williams, because I think Greedy Williams will be the first corner taken, doesn't necessarily mean he's the best one. I think San Francisco could move down and get some picks, which John Lynch has showed that he's not afraid to do that in the past. So, but I think they look at the defensive line. I think they pick Nick Bosa at number 1 if the draft was tonight.
Yeah, I agree. Which I know we're like 136 days out or something like that. I think that's what the count is. But, man, I'm getting excited for it. I can't wait for it.
Oh, yeah.
I love the draft every time. So exciting. Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think Nick Bosa is probably the pick for them. Obviously, we know free agency can change a lot of the things that happen here, and they could be a team that looks at Ziggy Ansah and say, hey, we're going to pay you, bring you in, which I would hope they didn't do. I would hope they would focus on other areas, maybe build up the offensive line some more. I know, their offensive line is starting to take shape. Mike McGlinchey has been very good as a rookie. Not fantastic, not Quentin Nelson good, but very good for an offensive tackle in the first round, and where he was selected as the first OT taken. So their team is going in the right direction. They'll get Jimmy Garoppolo back next year. They'll get Jerick McKinnon back. It looks like they've got something brewing with George Kittle as tight end, who's been fantastic for them. Dante Pettis is really starting to turn the corner in the recent weeks. If Pierre Garçon, who's a free agent, will probably be gone, but if Marquise Goodwin can stay healthy, they might have something with Kendrick Bourne, who's got 31 receptions. So they've got areas that they, are going to be okay. I don't think they need to really focus on receiver in the first round or even in the second round. But no, they are right now. They hold the key to the draft with that first pick. Bosa would probably be the guy. and that's if the draft was today. But we've got 3 weeks to figure it out. I think we'll start doing this a little bit more. It'll be more concrete, obviously, when the draft order is set within the top 10, within the top 20, essentially. But I think next week we'll put a little bit of focus on the Jets, the Falcons, and the Bills. And then we'll end the season with the Jags, Giants, Bucks, and maybe we'll go with the top 10, and we'll end it there. But do you have anything brewing for us content-wise on the website on cover1.net, or any specific prospects you've been watching over the last few days, or that you will be watching over the next few days?
Yeah, so for tomorrow morning, I'm going to have a piece on Carl Granderson. He is a Senior Bowl invite, and I guess a Senior Bowl acceptance, I guess I should say. I know those I have to split the terms there, but I always do it hand in hand, and I shouldn't do that because I don't want to confuse anybody. But Carl Granderson, defensive end out of Wyoming, 6'5", 255 pounds. Didn't have a great season stat-wise for Wyoming compared to last year. I think last year he had about 8.5 sacks, all Mountain West type player. This year only had 3 or 4. But I saw, just comparing the tape, I saw an improvement from just the skill-wise from 2017 to 2018. Played some bigger competition. There's a few cut-ups I put on Twitter today, @_Christian page, and it's him playing against Missouri. And Missouri has a very strong offensive line. Of course, Drew Lock protecting for him, but Granderson had some flash plays, and he's not a complete prospect right now. I don't know how pure of a pass rusher he is. And with his size, people may want to put him a little more off the ball, which I think would be a problem if that's the case. But shows a lot of quickness off the ball, and it shows kind of like a jack of all trades, a pass rush moves, not perfecting in one certain area, but shows ability with a spin move, an up and under, a club move. So he has some ability. So I think he'll be interesting to see him mobile, but that will be coming out tomorrow morning. I have some video content there, just some plays that stand out, some things he needs to work on. So look for that tomorrow morning, probably around 9 o'clock Eastern time.
9 o'clock Eastern time. You guys have to check that out over at cover1.net. Make sure you download the Cover One app in your app store on Google Play. All you have to do is search Cover One. It's not brand new anymore. That used to be my whole new thing. I used to be, download the brand new Cover One app. No, you need to know what it is by now. Search Cover One in your app store or Google Play, hit download, and get the push notifications for every single time we've got something scheduled in the morning. It'll come up, and you'll get that push notification. All you got to do is slide it open, and you got the content right there in your hands. So check it out with the Cover One app. For me personally, I'll be working on some things. I've got some scheme concept stuff, not so much like in detail, but some stuff for 3 draft prospects. I'll probably start doing this as we move along in draft season, regarding 3 players, where I think they'll fit. I'm going to talk about some player fits. So I've got some offensive guys that I'm really interested about. I think they'll make some good fits for some teams in the draft in April. So I'll talk about those in a content piece later this week. And then I'll probably focus on some Senior Bowl one-on-ones with the offensive line, defensive line. I've been drooling about it all over the podcast. I got to put it in article form, though, with some plays, with some clips, with some film. I think you guys always enjoy that, and that's the thing that separates us from so many different sites out there. We've always got film to back up our studies and our beliefs on stuff. And for good reason. I mean, you got to check out your Oklahoma piece. If you guys haven't checked it out, maybe the most physical, dominant college offensive line in football, and they get to match up against Alabama, which I cannot wait for.
Ooh, so fun. You're talking about one-on-ones. Let's get 5-on-5 right there.
Exactly. I mean, we're going to get Samaya, Ben Powers against Quinnen Williams, add Isaiah Buggs in there. There's going to be so much good stuff. You guys have to check that one out with Oklahoma. So a lot coming from us here at Cover One on the NFL Draft Podcast. So, Christian, where can we follow you on Twitter?
@_Christian Page.
That's right. You guys know where to follow me. Smash the follow button @Russ NFL Draft. This is all we got for you guys. So until next week, same time, same place, this is Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast.